Like our content? It's funded by viewers like you. Please consider becoming a sustaining supporter of New Church Live today.
So good morning, folks. Pastor Chuck Blair. Wonderful to have you joining us today, whether you're joining us here in our studio audience or from anywhere across the country, even overseas. It's wonderful to have you here. And it's been a busy season here at New Church Live, and it's interesting to watch and to have those connections with people with baptisms. And last week we had a beautiful home blessing and a wedding yesterday. A lot of beautiful things going on. And it's this beautiful reminder again and again of the real blessing of proximity, the real blessing of drawing close to people. And that's something that church should really do. It should help us all draw a little bit closer together, whether we're in person or whether we're online, and to feel that deep human connection. And today we're going to talk about a topic, and today's like a big one. Some services are more entertaining. Some services are sort of more setting a strategic direction in hopefully setting a strategic direction in people's minds. And today is actually pretty deep theology. It's trying to look at this idea of how do we keep our souls intact? How do we keep our souls intact? And it's important because in this era that we live in, there's so much that we're living in right now that we're moving in a world where there is so much difference. Moving in a world where there's just incredible amounts of difference. And sometimes that difference can feel very disorienting. So many things are changing. We're just talking before church, I grew up on an unpaved road in western Pennsylvania, and my mom she grew up on a farm where they didn't even have hot water. They had a hand pump in the kitchen. The changes, and it feels like we're going through an era where those changes are just accelerating, and AI and all these different things, and political debates, and this debate and that debate. And how do we keep our souls intact through that all? Because a lighthouse, maybe its most important role, comes during a storm. Sunny days, we don't notice it because we don't need it. But when the weather's stormy and that need arises, boy, aren't we glad it's there. So today is talking about how some of those pieces are. And maybe one way to take a look at it is to look at this concept. It's the concept of a touchstone. Now, a touchstone is interesting. Looking this up, I had one idea what it was, and it turns out it was something very different. A touchstone was how they used to, way back in the day, know whether something was pure gold or not. So literally, they would rub it on a stone, and it would have a test mark that was pure gold, and they would rub a little piece of gold on there, and then you'd be able to tell whether the piece that you had was real gold or not. And we're going to look at that today. We're going to use that as our analogy, because what are we bringing to life in terms of the touchstones? What is your touchstone? What is the thing that you bring other things to and sort of, leave a little mark and look like, does this measure up to a gold standard or not? And we're going to look at that from a spiritual perspective today. So we're going to start with this question. For you, in your life, what feels like pure gold to you? What is your touchstone? And you can text me in an answer at 215-740-3662. And again, sometimes I get answers at strange times during the week, like Thursday at 10:35, because that's when somebody's watching. Totally fine. Text me anytime with that answer, because we really want to hear, what is your touchstone? What do you think is pure gold for you? That standard that you have that you need to keep coming back to, and that you can kind of base life off of. Here's my life right now. Does it measure up or not? And it's not a punitive measuring up. It's just trying to figure out, to keep our souls intact, we have to have a touchstone. The point of a touchstone is to know what the gold standard is for us. And when times are difficult, just like a lighthouse, that gold standard helps us to get back to where God really calls us and to what means the most to us. So friends, it is wonderful to have you here at New Church Live. We have a great service ahead for you, wonderful music. It's terrific to have you here. So glad you joined us. So welcome. Welcome to New Church Live.
Good morning, everyone. Lord knows it's so easy to give up if you don't get it right the first time. But life will always provide a chance for a second try. When your body's been beaten up and your faith is broken down, you can go the extra mile that allows you to be here now. Be here now. Be here now. Sometimes you'll have to do it on your own, and no one will be by your side. So you can prove to yourself alone that you're prepared for the darkest ride. Sometimes it's hard to hold on, although the feeling is far from gone. But go on and let yourself be proud of the moment that you're in now. Be here now. Be here now. When I'm feeling far away from the life I've always known, I keep it in my yesterdays and let the present be my home. And when the worries of tomorrow start floating in my head, I let them sink beneath the surface, 'cause it hasn't happened yet. And for the loved ones I miss, you'll never be too far, 'cause the best part about this gift is that I can keep you in my heart. So when I feel I can't go on and I'm feeling down, I can hear your voice reminding me, live in the moment and be here now. Be here now. Be here now. Be here now. Thanks, Chuck.
And, you know, friends, like, got some great responses back there. I'm sure we'll get some other ones throughout the service here. Is there compassion in it? If not, something's off. Great touchstone there. My love for my daughter and my granddaughter. My wife, my kids, my grandkids. Next is dear friends. I think when relationships with those I love the most have that complete synchronicity, when we feel we just get each other and accept each other just the way we are, there is a peacefulness about these moments. And there's some others online there, friends, and it's a beautiful concept, right? Like, when we keep our souls intact and we have our touchstones, it's interesting. It kind of moves in a process here. We're going to talk about that process from a real external thing, an external touchstone, and we're going to get closer and closer to this idea of proximity. I mean, it just is fascinating. Like, so much of love and connection and keeping ourselves grounded is keeping ourselves close as best we can. And it's not always easy, but keeping ourselves close to friends, close to family, close to the people we love, close even to strangers can be just such a beautiful thing. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, first off, looking at touchstones, we're going to look at the big kind of 10,000 foot level, and this is Jesus' words. It's from Matthew 16. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? And I love that idea, you know, and Jesus is not asking the question there, he's telling the question. I mean, the point is, like, our souls are so important, and when we're in that soul place, somebody used the word synchronicity, there can be this feel of deep peace, you know, and deep synchronicity, and all of a sudden we just kind of have this feeling of connectedness. I mean, just a little story for you from yesterday with a feeling of that. Was getting ready for this wedding yesterday. It's out in western Pennsylvania. The bride had lost her father, and many of us probably are aware here that a symbol for a lot of people of a loved one who's passed is a cardinal. And I'm talking to the wedding planner right before the wedding, and she said when she came in the morning, to get the venue set up, and it was an indoor space, a cardinal had gotten in and was just sort of hanging out there in the venue space. And you can look at that so many different ways, but that's in that conversation and in that relaying of information and in that storytelling, there's this deep feeling of like, oh yeah, that's soul level stuff. And of course you can look at it and go like, it's just a bird. But I don't think it's just a bird. I think there are those things that come back and they remind us about the significance of the soul and about how there's so much in this life that we think we know and we think we understand, but the reality is we don't. There's so much more going on. And especially in times of difficulty and challenge, it's important for us to come back to these touchstones, to come back to these first things first. I mean, it was interesting. I don't think over the course of the week that I'm going to get anybody who gives me their favorite news media outlet as their primary touchstone. I don't think so. Because I think we know, have a favorite news media, have a news that you like watching. But do you really want that to be the full touchstone for everything in your life? I don't think that many people do. I think we know that there's something much more significant, much more powerful there. So let's get down to something a little more specific. Like here's the macro, which is Jesus saying, like, look, your soul's really important. Keep it intact. Keep coming back to that part deep within you. And now that begs the question, all right, let's start to pull that apart and start to think about how we can do that. Well, one story we looked at for a long time, actually with 10 minutes of morning calm, our little morning devotional, was the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. From a Christian New Church perspective, we don't read that as a literal destruction of a city. It's talking about parts of our life, individually that just aren't working, where we're off base, where life is dysfunctional in whatever way, shape, or form that might be, and how that part really does need to go. And there's a part in the Bible where it says Lot, who was in this city, this man by the name of Lot and his family, he gets sort of dragged out by angels. We've looked at this story a couple of times now, touched on it. He gets dragged out by angels, and because the angels know he just can't be in that space anymore. And I think probably a lot of us know that. We know a space we just can't be anymore. Yet for some reason, it's really hard for us to detach from it. The angels help with that detachment. And this is where a piece of New Church theology comes in that's kind of interesting about what that might mean. And sent Lot out from the middle of the overthrow. In other words, the city's blowing up, they're pulling him out, symbolizes the salvation of people focused on goodness and of people focused on truth that has goodness in it. So that idea that it comes back to this idea of good and truth. And many students will make a comment, well, that's always the answer to the test, isn't it? I just heard a high school student saying that. The answer to the test is always truth and goodness. Well, that's true because those really are universal things. You could say truth and goodness, and you could say wisdom and love. There's what we know, and then there's our heart. There's our head and our heart. And so much of life is how we bring those two things together. And so I want to dive a little deeper into this and talk about what might be some touchstones based on this idea of truth and goodness. Well, I think maybe there's three possible touchstones we can have that will get us closer to proximity. Outrage, goodness, and truth. Outrage, goodness, and truth. Now, I want to talk about the first one, and I want to do it with a smile. Because I think we live in an era right now, and I remember reading this years ago, talking about like the era of outrage. We live in an era of outrage. So the way life looks is it's sort of outrage. And the more outrage we can have, somehow that feels like that's closer to the truth. In other words, the more upset, the more angry, the more volume, the more this, the more that, the blah, 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 that somehow equals more truth. And so I was thinking of it like a piano, and It's kind of like a piano where we just hit this one note, and we just hit this one note over and over and over and over again, and we sort of have only one note, which is the note of outrage. And the only way we can somehow feel that note has efficacy is just by playing it louder and louder. So if you're outraged, I'm going to be more outraged. And that's sort of a wacky touchstone. That isn't a way that society flourishes in any way, shape, or form. It's not a way that we draw closer to other people. And we have to ask ourselves this question: what does a life organized around outrage look like? In other words, if the whole pivot of our life is outrage, what does that really look like? And I was talking with my wife this morning, and we were talking about how, isn't it interesting in life, when we have character traits that are not healthy, we really struggle. It's a hard way to live. And I think about that. I think about people, and when I get this way, people who just get caught up in this outrage cycle. It's just a hard way to live. Friends, remember, we're going to come back to this a million times. When we talk about proximity, the need for proximity, outrage counterfeits proximity. In other words, it's like a counterfeit dollar bill. It looks like a dollar bill. It looks like we're close because we're all complaining about the same things. But I seriously doubt those are the people who are going to really show up in your life. Because if our whole modus operandi, and this is a danger in our culture, if our whole modus operandi becomes outrage, eventually you're going to be the target of that. That's just how it goes. So we have to look at that, and we have to be able to hold that at a distance. Some things I was thinking about. I was thinking about, a life organized around outrage. Like everything is judged. Everything from how you check into the movie theater to the food at the restaurant to this, to that, everything gets judged. And once everything gets judged, everything gets broken up into a binary of good or bad. And that's where we confuse our opinions with facts. And our facts are not opinions are not facts. And again, that judgment across everything. So it becomes much more a conversation about power, not about mutuality. About power, not about mutuality. Think a lot about that one. That's so significant in our relationships, to remember that it's not if there's a relationship, and this could be a close friend, this could be a loving partner, this could be a spouse, this could be a grandkid. It's not about a power dominion kind of dynamic. It's not about that I have the answer and you don't. It's about this we part that can start to discover answers, that can start to move forward, that can start to figure stuff out. And when the only validity we have, when we confuse validity with volume, like the most valid argument is the loudest, there's no space for that. There's no space for mutuality. Because just think about your reaction to that, friends. When you're really in that place where there's just a lot of upset and there's just a lot of anger and a lot of outrage, maybe we buy into it for a bit, but that's a hard place to live for any extended period of time. And what I imagine most of us do is we start to withdraw. And when we start to withdraw, there can be no mutuality. There can be no us. There can be no proximity. When we do that, the mark that it leaves on the touchstone is maybe just a burn mark. Just a burner. That's it. So let's get to something a little better here. We can also have life that is organized around truth, and that's a different kind of thing. So instead of outrage, we organize our lives around truth. And that's a beautiful concept to look at and to ask the question, what does a life organized around truth look like? Well, I want to say this, friends, is that, with the truth thing, again, it's actually kind of better, right, than outrage. And that idea of truth, especially truth that has a lot of goodness in it, we need to be aware with truth that it's a beautiful thing and it can be very easily weaponized. Beautiful thing, very easily weaponized. And I want to talk for a minute just about like when our own ideas of what the truth is, when we say, all right, I'm going to come from the truth and I'm going to tell you exactly how it is. We come from it from that perspective. And that's why I always get a little nervous when somebody's like, look, Chuck, I'm just a complete truth teller. In other words, you're just going to tell me your opinion is what I'm thinking as they say that. And you're going to think your opinion's the fact, which gets back to the previous one. But we have to be so careful, right? And we'll talk about the good part of truth. We have to be so careful with the negative part of truth. Because that negative part of truth, our idea of truth, can become an idol in and of itself. It can become literally something we worship. We can worship our own opinions, and that's why, friends, like the whole idea of that life is about self-actualization, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true. I mean, I think God wants you to have self-confidence. He wants you to have this sense of self. But the whole idea of self-actualization, oh man, if it was all about self-actualization, the only two things I need is beer and a remote. That's it. There's got to be more than that. But we can make those things, and we can hold them up, and we can make them an idol, a religious idol. Here's a beautiful passage from the Psalms talking about the danger of idolatry. They have mouths, but they do not speak. Eyes they have, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not listen. Nor is there any breath in their mouths. Those who make them are like them. So is everyone who trusts in them. And it's just talking about how kind of wooden that way of living life is. It's just wooden. Like there actually isn't life in it. And that's why we have to be so careful as we handle truth. And yet there's this beautiful positive side to truth too. Because part of our brains are like, well, if truth isn't the answer, that means that just being loving is the answer. No, there's really is a role for truth. A very significant role. I want to speak to that significant role about truth. Because what truth gives us is these two things up here. It gives us both clarity and alignment. Now, this is important, and it's granted, it's parsing, it's a little bit of wordplay, a little bit of semantics, but I don't know how else to explain it. But I think this is a really significant thing for us to consider in our spiritual lives, because I do think that this is how the Lord is asking us to move with our thinking. And again, the background to this is what the Lord is having us do. Like, this is the process we will go through. And it's a beautiful process. It's the process where we move from certainty to clarity. Now, the certainty part of it, that's where we are absolutely 100% certain. We know everything about everyone, and that's a really dangerous part. In any time I work with a couple, I try to remind them, like, be really, really careful when you feel like you know for certain why they did something. If a sentence starts out, I know why you did that, be very careful. Could you be right? Maybe. But if you're wrong, you're going to be really, really wrong. And our view is so much based on that there is this certainty out there, and we can discover it, and we can find the 5 steps or the 3 steps or the 2 steps, or we can find the person, and the more kind of certain they know, the more kind of a guru kind of figure they are, where they're just certain about everything, the more followers they might have. But we have to be so careful there, friends, because life is not about certainty. It's about clarity. It's about clarity. And how do you know the difference? How do you know the difference? Well, I was thinking a little bit about that, and you probably have some better answers than I do, but I was thinking that the people in my life who I know are really certain about everything, they're broadcasting that certainty all over the place. And don't get on their bad side. Don't get on their bad side. But clarity. Well, I've just seen this so many times. People who are just spiritually clear. And everything can be swirling around them. All these problems, all these challenges, and they're clear. And I've seen it where they may even have these really, really serious health issues crop up. They may get a cancer diagnosis or may end up in the hospital or may, heaven forbid, lose a loved one. But you know what? They're still clear. That clarity part, it's hard to put words to because when you experience it, it's not like some big, huge insight. I remember working with someone years ago, probably 20 years ago now, and it was a father of 5, and he had cancer, and he's coming to the end of his life's journey, lived a great life. And I asked him, if he was nervous about passing away, nervous about what might come, any of that stuff. And he said, "No, Chuck, I'm fine. I'm fine. I worry about my wife and my kids." See, that's clarity. That's like super clear. And all of life can be spinning around in a million different directions. But there was this deep, humble place where that person was, and it was really remarkable. I mean, it was coming to my mind even saying that. I remember years and years and years ago, 9/11, reading through kind of the last communications that people had with loved ones. And if you go to the Flight 93 Memorial in central Pennsylvania, you can listen to some of the last phone calls that people had. Very moving. You're not going to get through it without crying, just so you know. But there's a clarity to all these phone calls. I have never read, heard of, or read one in the New York Times or any other piece of whatever online or heard one at the Flight 93 Memorial where somebody talked about vengeance, finding the perpetrators. All these calls, as these people knew by then that the odds of them surviving were very small, were all around clarity. And the clarity came down to this: I love you. I want you to know that. I think, friends, that's the kind of truth that really does serve us well when we have that kind of clarity. And that kind of truth does leave a mark. But it's so subtle. And maybe that's why we just need to, in life, I think so much of life is just learning to slow down, be here now. So much to slow down so we can see it. So we can see the people that have that kind of clarity. I mean, just even a little one. I was listening to a podcast this morning of an attorney who works with people on death row. And, he's trying to work with them, and over the course of years, it can be years and years that he works with them. And what he does to have conversations with them, because he can't talk to them every day, is that he'll send them a book. And a lot of these people aren't great readers, so he'll gear it so that there's an easier book, getting harder and harder to read. And then he watches them just start to take off and flourish. And then he gets together, as soon as they've read the book, he gets together with them to talk about the book. That's part of his relationship with them as an attorney and a client. That's clear. There's so many clear parts to that. So many parts of that where it's coming back to this human instinct, this human draw towards connection, which is right from God. Right from God. Now, let's take a look at what happens, friends, when we go to that last part. Like, what does a life organized around goodness look like? What does a life organized around goodness look like? And here, friends, we could look at it. What is a life organized around love would be another way to say it. So we can have outrage, we can have truth, and we can have goodness. And which one will be the most healthy touchstone for us in our lives? And that goodness one, again, I want to give a smattering of thoughts here. Yesterday I was out on a walk and I was listening to another thing, getting ready for a sermon, and the guy said, great question. He sort of put it on its head because his tone was, for many people ask the question, well, what are you most afraid of for your grandchildren? Which is a legitimate question. But he had he's flipped it. He said, what are you most excited about for your grandchildren? The world they're going to live in. I liked that. Is there time for the other way to look at it? Sure. But that idea of that's getting to trying to say, okay, what does a life of goodness look like? Well, a life of goodness will always be grounded in hope. We can't even pursue things like justice without this basic hope that we stand in. When we stand in that place, that's where we can really live a life around goodness. And there's so many ways, friends, this could look. I want to give you just a regular kind of one, and then I want to talk about it biblically. If you look at just some of the basic parts of it, deep relationships, social connections built on trust and thoughtfulness. That's what I think a life of goodness looks like. Deep relationships, social connections built on trust and thoughtfulness. And it doesn't mean, again, for all the introverts out there, it doesn't mean you have a thousand of these. That's not the way most people have. It's about you just have a handful of those things, because that really matters. A very famous study that some of you have heard about, you can look it up, was a 1938 study. They started in 1938. They were looking at happiness. It's been one of the longest running studies of all time. They took the graduating class of Harvard from 1938. They also took a bunch of blue-collar folks as well from the Boston area, and they've traced their lives. They followed their lives, and they followed their lives to sort of answer that question, what is happiness? And you can imagine, right? 1938 Harvard class, there was even a president in that class, I'm not sure which one. But you can see a TED Talk on it, I should say, if you want to Google it. But it's interesting with these groups, like for both of them, guess what it ended up being, this life of goodness? That very thing. That very idea of deep relationships and social connection based on trust and thoughtfulness. That's what really mattered. Now, friends, just like hold that for a second. Outrage doesn't work. It doesn't work in that scenario. It doesn't work. And that's why I think, again, if we're going to work at this thing about keeping our souls intact, we have to keep coming back to this gold standard. This gold standard. Now, does Jesus ever talk about this? Absolutely. The story, I was thinking about a famous story that I would hope all of us know, probably some of you don't, but it's a beautiful story of the Good Samaritan. And it's where kind of we can see all these things kind of coming together. This life based on truth and this life based on goodness, the two coming together. So the story is a very simple story. Jesus asked them, well, who's the neighbor here? Who's the most neighborly? What's the most neighborly way to act? And he tells this story about this man who's fallen among thieves. He gets beat up. He gets left in a ditch. And these people keep on passing by them. And the one as a pastor that always makes me laugh, because I think it's Jesus kind of a little prod, and I think Jesus would do it with a little smile. One of the people who walk by is a priest who's coming from Jerusalem. In other words, he's a priest coming from church, a pastor coming from church, you might say. But here's this person who's all beat up. They don't want anything to do with it. They just keep on passing by. But here's this other person, this Good Samaritan. And Samaritans were considered on the outs. Anytime you hear the word Samaritan in the New Testament, they were outliers. They were way out there. They were a marginalized group. And that's why there's even in the phrase like the Good Samaritan, that would be an oxymoron at that time. There was no such thing in Jewish culture as a Good Samaritan. Except for in Jesus' math, there was Good Samaritan. And it's this beautiful part because this Good Samaritan goes and he takes care of the guy. He takes him, not to a hospital, but he takes him to get care. He leaves money for his care. There's this beautiful part of like the gold standard. The gold standard there was, again, deep connection, taking care of people. Remembering, and here I'm quoting Father Gregory Boyle, that people are never an interruption. And he does the next right thing in taking care of this person. And he doesn't just do it by walking over and just saying, I love you. Though that would be nice. There's that truth part here to it too. And that's going back to that first quote where it says the kind of truth that really moves the world is truth that has goodness deep within it. And truth that has goodness deep within it, you know what it looks like? It looks like taking that person to what would amount to a hospital. You know what truth within goodness looks like? It looks like him leaving money to make sure he was okay and had all his needs met. And it looks like this as well. Clarity. That clarity and alignment. This is just what we do. Period. And that clarity, friends, as well, that this is just what we do, and we don't need thanked for it. There's nowhere in the story where he comes back for his newspaper shot or the reward or anything. The doing was it. That's the true alignment. That's the clarity. That's the coming back to first things first. Living in that spot, friends, can be incredibly powerful. And what is the mark that leaves? Well, there's a beautiful idea here, in terms of the mark it leaves. This is from the book New Jerusalem and its Heavenly Doctrine. Worship of the Lord consists of a life of loving. It's where as we think about this whole concept of worship, and this is something to think about as the musicians come out, as we think about this whole life of worship. A life of worship is a life of kindness. A life of worship is a life of loving. And it's why we're literally able to worship 24/7 and come to church for 1 hour once a week. And both are beautiful forms of worship. But all those things, they get us back to this touchstone, get us back to that gold standard. And in doing that, they return us to ourselves.
Fast car, I want a ticket for anywhere. Maybe we can make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove. You got a fast car, I got a plan to get us out of here. Been working at a convenience store, managed to save just a little bit of money. We don't have to drive too far, just cross the border and into the city. You and I can both get jobs and finally see what it means to be living. See, my old man's got a problem. He lives with the bottle, that's the way it is. Said his body's too old for working. His body's too young to look like his. My mom went off and left him. She wanted more from life than he could give. Said somebody's gotta take care of him. So I quit school and that's what I did. You got a fast car. Is it fast enough so we can fly away? We gotta make a decision. Leave tonight or live and die this way. 'Cause I remember when we were driving in your car. Speed so fast I felt like I was drunk. City lights laid out before us, and your arms felt nice wrapped around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belong. I had a feeling I can be someone, be someone, be someone. You got a fast car. We go cruising and entertain ourselves. You still ain't got a job. Now I work in the market as a checkout girl. I know things will get better. You'll find work and I'll get promoted, and we'll move out of the shelter. We'll buy a bigger house and live in the suburbs. Remember when we were driving in your car. Speed so fast I felt like I was drunk. City lights laid out before us. Your arms felt nice wrapped around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belong. I had a feeling I could be someone, be someone, be someone. You got a fast car. I got a job that pays all our bills. You stay out drinking late at the bar. See more of your friends than you do with your kids. I'd always hope for better. Thought maybe together you and me find it. I got no plans, I ain't going nowhere. Take your fast car and keep on driving. 'Cause I remember when we were driving in your car. Speed so fast I felt like I was drunk. City lights laid out before us, and your arms felt nice wrapped around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belong. I had a feeling I could be someone, be someone, be someone. You got a fast car. Is it fast enough so we can fly away? You gotta make a decision. Leave tonight or live and die this way.
So we're going to ad-lib a little bit here. So right now, as you come to New Church Live, this is where we do the appeal. And I don't feel like we can let a song like that just like, we need to sit with that for a second. Tracy Chapman in that song, what I love about that song is it really speaks to the ache, right? That ache we have for connection. That ache we have for proximity. And we get caught up in the whole fast car thing of entertainment and movement, activity. But that's not what our souls actually yearn for. It's not about wanting the fast car. It's about wanting the connection. Now here I do want to work in just a little bit. We're coming to the end of our fiscal year here at New Church Live. Hopefully this church has answered at least a little part of that for you in some way. And that's where your support is always so deeply appreciated as we try to figure out how to move forward and how to be this place where people can find connection, again, from all over the country, and find a way to just find a new way, a third way, something different that gets us out of this age of outrage into something much more true. You can give very simply. You can do it with our URL code. You can text. You can do any number of things. You can go on our website. We have them all there. And I'll just close by saying we deeply appreciate all your support. It matters immensely. So to close here, again, that song is like so haunting. I remember, I got to see Tracy Chapman in concert, and that song just like, man, does it grab you. Because there really is this deep desire for connection that we all have. Such a big part of that touchstone. C.S. Lewis famously shared, when he was talking about God, and he was this atheist and professor and who became an amazing Christian author. And C.S. Lewis said, wouldn't it be weird if we had been given this thing of thirst, but there weren't such a thing as water? That's a great point. And I feel that way about spirituality. Like, it's weird because we all want this connection, and somehow it's transcendent. And I was talking with a congregant before this. Somehow it sort of is beyond words. It's ineffable. It's really hard to pin down. But we all feel that kind of thirst. Like, isn't it interesting, right? That spiritual stuff can be the water that helps us to quench that thirst in a little bit, in a small way. I don't ever think we fully get that thirst quenched in this life. I think that's part of heaven. But it's just something to hold. And that idea, friends, that with this life, and when we come to these touchstones, it's just no small thing. It's not a small thing at all. I mean, I think it's critically important that we really think through and do work around what our touchstones are. Or else just the popular culture and media is going to lead us, and it's going to lead us wherever the algorithms lead us, which doesn't tend to be a great place. We need quiet there. We need stillness. We need people. We need the Lord. We need revelation, however that is for you. We need all of it to get us back to the right kind of touchstone. I think with life, friends, when you look at it, right, touchstone of outrage, goodness, and truth, outrage, goodness, and truth. If I was to say how to sort of pull it, maybe the right size is there, is I would, just a little bit of outrage is probably a good thing. One of the things I share with people frequently is probably what breaks your heart probably tells you what you value the most. So if you don't overplay it, probably what most outrages you may well, if you're calm and you take the time to think through it, may well point to what you really value in life. So a little bit of outrage, probably really good. And then you want to really focus on the truth. You really want to learn it because you really want to try to live a life that is aligned and clear. And if you remember back from that slide on alignment and clarity, again, this is sort of spirituality 101. Spirituality gives you a compass, not a map. It's not telling you with certainty. Certainty is like the map. You go up to this road, you take a left, then you go a mile, you take a right. It's not what this is about. This is about a direction. Not specific directions in micro detail. This is about just we're going this way. The run line of a sailboat, we're going this direction, and there'll be a lot of tacking back and forth, but this is the direction we're headed. And then this goodness part, this love part. It's interesting, friends, like what really changes our lives. What changes our lives, and the whole point of Jesus coming down, living among us, is that idea of being proximate, not approximate. Approximate is sort of like lots of gray area. No, this is proximate, like this is right beside, not in the neighborhood of. Christianity is about this idea that God, the big guy, decided to come to earth, God incarnate, decided to come to earth because that love of God drove that proximity, that need to be as close to humanity as possible, as close as one could be. And that included the blind, the leper, the lame, the Roman soldiers, the leadership of the Roman Empire. Like, it was everybody that he touches throughout his life story. Proximate, getting close. And it's interesting, friends, when you think about that, you think about like that being the point, the proximate being the point. When we go through life, outrage will not draw us closer to other people. It just won't. It ends up with these battle lines all over the place. That's what outrage breeds. Truth, if it's misused, does the exact same thing. Truth in its proper form can start to then move us to a different direction. But I would argue that again, people don't tend to draw close to other people via the vehicle of truth, even though truth can be important. But goodness as a touchstone. Love as a touchstone. That will always draw us closer to others. That will always place us in relationship. I was thinking about it last week. We are so lucky. We have an amazing volunteer, Walt, who leads our teams that go down to St. Francis Inn. And I love to go down when there's an opportunity and I'm not working in the evening. I highly suggest we do this. I'll say this all the time. Highly suggest you make your way down there too. Talk to Walt about how to do that. And we were down there again and serving a table. And it's so interesting because I think in that particular part of Philadelphia, if you were to tell me just to walk down a street, I'd be all anxious and nervous. But within the confines of St. Francis Inn, there's no nervousness at all. There's just connection. Why is that? Because I think the touchstone, and you can find these places, the touchstone there is goodness. The touchstone there is love. And because the touchstone is goodness and love, it rapidly draws you into a proximate relationship with other people. So other people are not there from a truth perspective to be judged or to be whatever. And they're certainly not there from an outrage perspective where we're outraged about the opioid crisis or whatever. They're not there because of that. People are there because of that love being the touchstone. And when love is the touchstone and we draw proximate to other people, the walls come down. And when the walls come down, we find our souls return to themselves, and we find how to keep our souls intact. And it's such a different way of life. I mean, I think that's why, and friends, it's like it's a lifetime of journey for all of us. That's why the whole thing of repentance means to change your mind. Like literally the word repentance, metanoia, metanous, spirituality 101, means to change your mind. It doesn't mean to beat up on yourself. It means to change your mind. Change the way you think. Look at things differently. And that process is not easy. I mean, a truism about truth is before the truth will make you free, as it says in Gospel of John, before the truth will make you free, it will make you miserable. Because it's not easy to do that. And I imagine all of us can look at people in our lives who seem to have figured that out, though, and they're out there. Those people are out there. And we can find them. And we can learn to live into this world in such a new and different and empowered way. Yeah, I guess I want to end with that. So let's think about that this week. Let's think about the keys on the piano. What are the keys you want to play this week? Do you want to just keep on playing the one on outrage? I vote no. Do you want to play on the key of truth, that's a pretty good one. Do you want to play on the key of love? That's the gold standard. That goodness, that love. 1 Corinthians 13 ends with these beautiful words. But the greatest of these is love. Love never fails. The gold standard. Amen. All right, friends. What we're going to do now is we're going to come in for our soft landing here at New Church Live. I'd ask you to join me in a little prayer, little meditation, a little blessing, and then we'll hear our last song. So please join me. Lord, thank you for your presence here today. And Lord, help us to consider what we need to do, how we need to be, to continue to keep our souls intact. How do we come back again, Lord, to that thing that our souls yearn for, that connection, that relationship, that thoughtfulness, that goodwill, that ability to make a difference in the world as you give us to see it. Help us, Lord, to return to that place again and again, souls intact, away from the chatter and the frenetic and the anger and the outrage, away from all those things. At the very least, holding those things in their proper place, that they can never be destinations. And thank you, Lord, again, for this reminder of what is home. A love that never fails, a goodness that is always true, a clarity and an alignment that sees its way to serve, that reminds us of first things recognizably first, forever and always. Your prayer. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be grateful unto you, be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Have a wonderful week, friends.
Gravity is working against me, and gravity, it wants to bring me down. Oh, I'll never know what makes this man, with all the love that his heart can stand, dream of ways to throw it all away. Oh, gravity is working against me. Oh, and gravity, it wants to bring me down. twice as much ain't twice as good and can't sustain like one half could. It's wanting more that's gonna send me to my knees. Oh, twice as much ain't twice as good and can't sustain like one half could. It's wanting more that's gonna send me to my knees. And whoa, gravity, stay the hell away from me. Oh, gravity is taking better men than me. Oh, how can that be? Keep me where the light is. Just keep me where the light is. Just keep me where the light is. Come on, keep me where the light is. Just keep me where the light is. Come on, keep me where the light is.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week.